The video of my father punching my mother in the face had 3 million views before he even knew it existed. I posted it at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in March, unable to sleep after watching the Ring camera footage for the 100th time. By 6 a.m., when Dad was getting ready for his job as Senior Vice President at First National Bank, the video was trending on Twitter. By 8 a.m., when he walked into his corner office overlooking downtown, every single person in that building had seen him break my mother's orbital bone with a closed fist while she begged him to stop. By noon, he was unemployed, arrested, and his name was synonymous with domestic violence across the internet. The man who had spent 23 years carefully constructing an image of success, respectability, and moral authority was destroyed in less than 12 hours by a $20 camera he never knew existed. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand why an 18-year-old would secretly install cameras throughout his childhood home and then deliberately destroy his father's life with the footage, you need to understand the 23 years of hell that came before that Tuesday morning. You need to understand what it's like to grow up in a house where Mom fell down the stairs again was a regular excuse, where makeup to cover bruises was bought in bulk, where the emergency room staff knew us by name but never asked the right questions. My name is Jackson Morgan. I had just turned 18 2 months before I exposed my father as the monster he really was. My mother had been falling down, walking into doors, and having mysterious accidents for my entire life. It took me 18 years to understand these weren't accidents. It took me another month to gather the courage to do something about it. And it took just 1 week of hidden camera footage to end it forever. But this isn't just a story about domestic violence. It's about the complicity of communities that choose not to see. It's about the technology that finally made the invisible visible. It's about a mother who stayed for her children and a son who saved her when she couldn't save herself. It's about how sometimes the only way to stop a monster is to show the world what they really are. The first accident I remember was when I was 4 years old. Mom had a cast on her wrist, and when I asked what happened, she laughed. That hollow laugh I would come to recognize as her hiding pain, and said she had slipped on ice in the driveway. It was July. Even at 4, something felt wrong about that explanation. But Dad was there, rubbing Mom's shoulders, saying how clumsy she was, how they needed to be more careful, and I accepted it because what else could a 4-year-old do? My father, William Morgan, Bill to his friends, Mr. Morgan to everyone at church, Sir to me, and my younger sister Emma, was what people called a pillar of the community. He had worked his way up from teller to senior vice president at First National Bank over 20 years. He was an elder at Riverside Presbyterian Church, where he taught adult Sunday school and organized the annual charity drive. He was on the school board, the country club board, the Chamber of Commerce. His picture was in the local paper at least once a month, always smiling, always shaking someone important's hand, always representing the best of our small city of 80,000 people. At home, he was different. Not always. That was the insidious part. There would be weeks, sometimes months, of relative peace. He would be the father who taught me to throw a baseball, who helped with algebra homework, who took the family to Disney World and bought us everything we wanted. During those good periods, I could almost convince myself that the bad times were anomalies, that maybe Mom really was just clumsy, that maybe the tension I felt was just my imagination. But then something would trigger him. Mom would laugh too loud at someone else's joke. The house wouldn't be clean enough. Dinner would be 5 minutes late. Emma or I would get a B on a test instead of an A. The bank would have a bad quarter. Someone at church would challenge his opinion. The triggers were unpredictable and ever-changing, but the result was always the same. The tension would build first. Dad would go quiet, his jaw clenched, his movements sharp and aggressive. Mom would notice. She always noticed, and would start overcompensating. The house would become spotless. Dinner would be elaborate. She would wear his favorite dress, style her hair the way he liked, laugh at all his comments even when they weren't funny. Emma and I learned to disappear during the tension phase. We would stay in our rooms, come out only for meals where we ate in silence, go to friends' houses when possible. We became ghosts in our own home, trying not to trigger the explosion we knew was coming. The explosion always came at night, always after Emma and I were supposedly asleep. But our house was old, built in the 1960s, and sound carried through the heating vents. I would lie in bed, pillow over my head, trying not to hear the accusations, the screaming, the sound of impact, sometimes hand on flesh, sometimes body against wall, always followed by Mom's muffled crying. The next morning, Mom would have a new injury, a black eye from walking into the bathroom door in the dark, a split lip from accidentally biting herself, bruises on her arms from falling while carrying laundry, a limp from tripping over the cat. The excuses were endless and increasingly creative, and everyone, teachers, neighbors, church friends, emergency room staff, pretended to believe them. My mother, Jennifer Morgan, was a high school English teacher. She was beloved by her students, known for her passion for literature, her after-school tutoring, her willingness to help any student who needed it. She had a master's degree, had published papers on teaching methodology, had won Teacher of the Year twice. She was smart, educated, accomplished, and trapped. "Why don't you leave him?" I asked her once when I was 14. Dad was at a business trip, and Mom's face was a rainbow of healing bruises. We were alone in the kitchen, Emma, at a sleepover, and I finally had the courage to acknowledge what we all knew but never discussed. Mom looked at me for a long moment, and I saw her consider lying, consider maintaining the fiction. Then her shoulders sagged, and for the first time, we talked about it honestly. Where would we go, Jackson? This is his house. His name is on everything. He controls all the money. I make $40,000 a year as a teacher. He makes $200,000 at the bank. How would I support you and Emma? We could stay with Grandma. Your grandmother is in a nursing home with dementia. My parents are dead. I have no family, Jackson. No support system. Your father made sure of that over the years. Isolated me from every friend I ever had. Then we call the police. And say what? That the respected bank vice president, the church elder, the school board member hits his wife. With what proof? The emergency room visits where I said I fell? The police reports that don't exist because I never filed them? It would be his word against mine. And who do you think they'd believe? But the injuries could all be explained by my supposed clumsiness. Your father is very careful, Jackson. He never hits me where it can't be covered by clothing. The black eyes, the split lips, those are rare, only when he loses complete control. Usually it's body blows, places that bruise under clothes. He knows exactly what he's doing. So we're just stuck. She reached across the table and took my hand. Until you and Emma are 18, yes. I can endure anything for 4 more years if it means you and your sister have stability, can finish school, can get to college. Once you're both adults, once you're safe, then I can leave. Mom, that's insane. You can't take 4 more years of this. I've taken 14 years already. What's 4 more? That conversation changed something in me. The helpless fear I'd felt as a child transformed into rage, but a rage I had to hide. I was 14, skinny, unathletic. Dad was 6'2", 200 pounds, with hands that could leave fingerprint bruises on Mom's arms through a sweater. I couldn't fight him physically, but I started thinking about other ways. I began documenting, taking photos of Mom's injuries when she wasn't looking, writing down dates, times, descriptions in a hidden journal, recording audio on my phone when I heard fights starting, building a case. though I didn't know what I would do with it. The abuse got worse as Emma and I got older. Dad seemed to sense that his control was slipping, that we were becoming old enough to potentially challenge him. He became more violent, but also more careful. He would take Mom on weekend trips that were really opportunities to beat her away from us, returning with her injured, but with alibis about hiking accidents or hotel bathroom falls. He also became more psychologically abusive. He would humiliate Mom in public in subtle ways that looked like jokes to observers, but were devastating to her. He controlled every penny she spent, making her account for every receipt. He monitored her phone, her email, her movements. He installed tracking apps on her devices, security cameras around the house that only he could access. The security cameras gave me the idea that would eventually destroy him. If he could watch us, why couldn't I watch him? I got a job at 17, working at Best Buy after school and on weekends. I told my parents it was for college savings, and they approved. Dad liked anything that looked responsible and successful. But really, I was saving for something else. Ring cameras had just become popular and affordable. Small, discreet, motion-activated, uploading directly to the cloud. Perfect for what I needed. I bought them one at a time over several months, paying cash, having them delivered to my friend Tyler's house, so Dad wouldn't see the packages. The installation was the tricky part. I had to do it when both parents were gone, which was rare. But in February of my senior year, opportunity came. Dad had a banking conference in Chicago, 3 days. Mom had a teaching workshop the same weekend, something she rarely got to attend, but Dad approved because it made him look supportive to have his wife pursuing professional development. Emma was at a friend's house for the weekend. I was supposed to stay with Tyler, but instead, I spent 3 days installing cameras throughout our house. One in the living room, hidden behind a picture frame, angled to capture the main space, where many arguments started. One in the kitchen, tucked behind the coffee maker, covering the area where Mom spent most of her time. One in the hallway, disguised as a motion sensor, capturing the path between bedrooms. One in the garage, hidden among tools, watching the space where Dad often cornered Mom. One by the front door, looking like a doorbell camera, but actually recording interior movement. I didn't put any in bedrooms or bathrooms. I had some boundaries, and I didn't want to violate anyone's privacy more than necessary. But the common areas would be enough. They had to be. I connected them all to a cloud account only I could access, set them to record on motion, and waited. The first week, nothing happened. It was one of the good periods. Dad brought Mom flowers, took us all out to dinner, was the perfect husband and father. Watching the footage, you'd think we were the ideal family. Mom smiled, Dad laughed, Emma and I looked relaxed. If I hadn't lived through 18 years of violence, I might have believed it myself. The second week, the tension started building. It began with a comment about dinner being too salty, then Mom's car needing gas when Dad wanted to use it, then a parent-teacher conference where Mom was praised and Dad was barely mentioned. Small things, insignificant to anyone else. But I could see the storm forming. It broke on Thursday night, March 15th, at 11:47 p.m. I was in my room, supposedly asleep, but actually watching the camera feeds on my laptop. Emma was asleep. I had checked. Mom and Dad were in the living room, and I could see Dad's body language escalating. He was pacing, gesturing aggressively, his voice rising though I couldn't make out words through my door. Then I watched him grab Mom by the throat and slam her against the wall. The camera captured everything in high definition. Mom's feet lifting off the ground, her hands clawing at his grip, her face turning red, then purple. Dad's expression of cold fury, the way he held her there for 10 seconds, 15, 20, before finally releasing her. Mom collapsed to the floor, gasping. Dad stood over her, fists clenched, and for a moment I thought he would kick her. Instead, he said something. The cameras had audio I would discover later, and walked away. Mom lay there for 5 minutes before slowly getting up and limping to the bathroom. I sat in my bed, laptop burning my thighs, shaking with rage and adrenaline. I had it. I had actual proof. Visual evidence of attempted murder, because that's what choking someone for 20 seconds is. No one could explain this away as an accident or clumsiness. But I didn't do anything yet. I needed more. One incident, however severe, might not be enough. Dad had too much influence, too much reputation. I needed a pattern, multiple incidents, undeniable proof of systematic abuse. Over the next 2 weeks, I captured 5 more incidents. Dad pushing Mom down the stairs. She caught herself on the railing, but it was clearly intentional. Dad punching her in the stomach, doubling her over, then walking away like nothing happened. Dad throwing a coffee mug at her head, missing by inches, the ceramic shattering against the wall. Dad twisting her arm behind her back until she cried out in pain. And finally, the one that would go viral. Dad punching her directly in the face, breaking her orbital bone because she had smiled at the male grocery store clerk. That last one happened on Monday, March 26th at 9:15 p.m. Mom had gone to get ice cream for dessert, Dad's favorite, an attempt to placate him during a tension phase. She came back with the wrong flavor, and there had been a $5 discrepancy in the receipt because the young male clerk had given her a discount. "You were flirting with him," Dad accused, his voice deadly quiet on the recording. "I wasn't, Bill. He just gave me the senior discount by mistake." I tried to correct him. "Don't lie to me. I saw how you smiled at him last week. You think I'm stupid." "Bill, please, he's 19 years old. He's Jackson's age." That's when he hit her. No warning, no build-up, just his closed fist connecting with her face, with a sound like a baseball bat hitting a watermelon. Mom went down hard, blood immediately streaming from her nose. The camera angle was perfect. You could see everything, including Dad stepping over her unconscious body to get a beer from the refrigerator. I knew that was the one. That was the video that would destroy him. But I also knew I had to be strategic about how I released it. I couldn't just send it to the police. Dad had connections there, golf buddies, people who might warn him or bury the evidence. I needed to make it impossible to ignore, so I turned to the internet. At 2 a.m. on Tuesday, March 27th, I created anonymous accounts on every social media platform. Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Reddit, YouTube. I edited the video to protect Mom's identity as much as possible, blurring her face, but leaving Dad's clear. I added text explaining the context. 22 years of falling downstairs. Bank executive, church elder, school board member, my mother's husband. Then I posted it everywhere with a simple caption. William Morgan, senior VP at First National Bank, beating his wife. Please share. Please help. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within an hour, the video had been shared thousands of times. People identified Dad from his face, his voice, the house visible in the background. His name started trending. Local news picked it up, then national. Someone found his LinkedIn, his Facebook, the bank's website with his professional headshot. Side-by-side comparisons of his smiling professional photo and the video of him punching Mom went viral. By 4 a.m., I had posted the other videos too, each one going more viral than the last. The choking video was particularly shocking. The length of time he held her, the way her feet dangled, the casual way he walked away after. Comments poured in by the thousands. Survivors sharing their stories. People identifying Dad from their interactions with him. Church members expressing horror. Bank customers saying they were closing their accounts. At 6 a.m., Dad's phone started ringing. I was in my room, listening through the walls as he answered call after call. His boss, his pastor, his lawyer, the police. Each conversation more panicked than the last. He had no idea how the videos had gotten online, who had taken them, how his life was unraveling at light speed. By 7 a.m., reporters were outside our house. Dad looked out the window at the news vans, the gathering crowd, and for the first time in my life, I saw fear in his eyes. He tried to leave for work, but people recognized him in the driveway. Someone threw an egg at his car. Someone else screamed, "Wife beater." He retreated back inside, and I could hear him on the phone with his lawyer demanding to know how to stop this. But you can't stop the internet. The videos were downloaded, re-uploaded, shared, memed, discussed, analyzed. Hashtag William Morgan was trending globally. His professional headshot became the face of domestic violence. The bank's social media was flooded with demands for his termination. The church's Facebook page was overwhelmed with calls for his removal. At 8:30 a.m., the police arrived, not his golf buddies, but state police, with a warrant for his arrest. The footage was evidence of multiple felonies: assault, battery, attempted murder. They handcuffed him in our driveway while news cameras rolled, while neighbors watched, while his carefully constructed image shattered into a million pieces. As they led him away, he saw me watching from my bedroom window. Our eyes met, and in that moment he knew. He knew it was me. He knew his son had destroyed him. The look of betrayal on his face was almost funny, as if he was the one who had been wronged. Mom was in shock. She had woken up to find police in her house, reporters on her lawn, her phone exploding with messages. The hospital called. They had seen the videos and wanted her to come in for treatment. Her school called. They were giving her indefinite leave and providing counseling. Friends she hadn't heard from in years called. They were sorry. They hadn't known. They wanted to help. But first, we had to deal with the immediate chaos. Subscribe to this channel if you believe that protecting abuse victims is everyone's responsibility. Too many people suffer in silence because speaking up seems impossible or dangerous. If this story resonates with you, hit that notification bell to join our community of survivors and advocates. The police took Mom to the hospital while Emma and I were taken to the station to give statements. I admitted to installing the cameras, showed them all the footage, gave them access to my cloud storage with dozens more videos I hadn't released. The detective, a woman named Sarah Martinez, who specialized in domestic violence cases, watched a few videos and had to leave the room. "In 20 years of doing this job," she said when she returned, "I've never seen such clear documentation. You know your videos have done more for domestic violence awareness in 12 hours than most campaigns do in years." "I just wanted it to stop," I said. "It stopped. Your father is looking at 15 to 20 years minimum. The attempted murder charge alone from the choking video could get him 10. Add in the other assaults, and he's done." Emma was devastated, but not surprised. At 15, she was old enough to understand what had been happening. She told the police about things I hadn't known. Times Dad had grabbed her too hard, threatened her, made her keep secrets. She had been living in fear too, just more quietly than Mom. The hospital kept Mom for 3 days. The orbital fracture required surgery. She had a severe concussion, damaged ribs, a partially torn rotator cuff, and bruising on 60% of her body. Some new, some weeks old, creating what the doctor called a timeline of abuse written on her skin. While she recovered, Emma and I dealt with the outside world. The house was surrounded by media, so we stayed with Tyler's family. The bank fired Dad within 24 hours, issuing a statement condemning domestic violence and announcing a $1 million donation to women's shelters. The church expelled him and offered to pay for Mom's medical bills and counseling. The school board held an emergency meeting and unanimously removed him, with several members crying as they watched the videos. But the internet attention was overwhelming. Our address was leaked. People sent death threats to Dad in jail, which somehow made us targets too. Mom's face, despite my blurring, was identified and spread across social media. Some people called her weak for staying. Others called her brave for surviving. Everyone had an opinion about our family, our choices, our trauma. We had to move. Tyler's family helped us pack, while Mom was still in the hospital. We took only essentials, left the house that had been our prison, and moved to an apartment complex 2 towns over. It was smaller, cheaper, but it felt like freedom. Dad's trial was 6 months later. By then, the viral nature of the case had died down, replaced by other scandals, other villains. But the evidence remained overwhelming. The prosecution played the videos in court. Several jurors cried. Dad's lawyer tried to argue provocation, stress, mental illness, anything to minimize the charges. But how do you explain away video of a man choking his wife until she passes out? Dad tried to testify in his own defense, claiming the videos were edited, taken out of context, that Mom had attacked him first off camera. But the prosecutor destroyed him with the simple question, "Mr. Morgan, can you show us a single injury you sustained from your wife in 22 years of marriage?" He couldn't, of course, because Mom had never raised a hand to him, never fought back, never done anything but try to survive. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all charges: attempted murder, assault, battery, domestic violence, child endangerment. The judge, an older woman who had watched every video, gave him the maximum sentence: 25 years with no possibility of early release. "Mr. Morgan," she said at sentencing, "you held a position of trust in this community. You were supposed to be a leader, a role model, a protector. Instead, you were a terrorist in your own home. Your children lived in fear. Your wife lived in hell. The videos your son courageously recorded show not just violence, but sadistic cruelty. 25 years is insufficient for what you've done, but it's the maximum I can impose. I hope you use that time to reflect on the monster you became." As they led Dad away, he looked at our family one last time. Mom, still healing, her face scarred but head held high. Emma, holding Mom's hand, no longer the scared little girl. And me, meeting his gaze steadily, no longer the helpless boy who hid under covers, trying not to hear the violence. "I'm your father," he said to me. "How could you do this to your father?" "You stopped being my father the first time you hit my mother," I replied. "You're just a criminal now." He was transferred to state prison that day. We heard through the lawyer that he had a hard time inside. Apparently, even criminals don't respect men who beat women. He was beaten several times, had to be moved to protective custody. I felt no sympathy. He was experiencing a fraction of the fear he had inflicted for 22 years. The aftermath was complicated. We were free but broken, poor but safe, traumatized but healing. Mom struggled most. 22 years of abuse doesn't just disappear because the abuser is in prison. She had PTSD, panic attacks, nightmares. She jumped at sudden movements, flinched at raised voices, apologized constantly for things that weren't her fault. The strong, passionate teacher I remembered from early childhood had been replaced by someone fragile and uncertain. But therapy helped. Slowly, painfully, she began to reclaim herself. She started teaching again, though at a different school where her story wasn't known. She joined a support group for domestic violence survivors. She even started dating eventually. A fellow teacher named Robert who was gentle and patient and understood that some wounds never fully heal. Emma threw herself into activism. At 16, She started speaking at schools about domestic violence, using our story to help other teenagers recognize abuse. She became the youngest board member of our local women's shelter. She started a social media campaign called #BehindClosedDoors that encouraged people to speak up about abuse they witnessed or experienced. As for me, I struggled with what I had done, not with exposing Dad. I never regretted that, but with the method. The viral videos had saved us but also exposed us. Mom's trauma became public entertainment. Our family's pain became content for strangers to consume and comment on. The videos were still out there, would always be out there, a permanent record of the worst moments of our lives. I also struggled with the hero narrative people wanted to put on me. Reporters called me brave. Activists called me an inspiration. Strangers called me a hero. But I didn't feel heroic. I felt guilty that it took me 18 years to act. I felt angry that I had to be the one to save my own mother. I felt exhausted from carrying the weight of what I had done. College helped. I went to State University on a full scholarship. The viral story had led to several offers from schools wanting the publicity of helping us. I studied computer science and psychology, trying to understand both the technology that had saved us and the psychology that had trapped us. I also started dating someone who understood complicated families. Maya's father was an alcoholic who had died when she was 12. She knew about keeping secrets, about protecting parents, about the complex grief of losing someone who hurt you. We trauma bonded at first, then genuinely fell in love. She was the first person I could be completely honest with about everything. The fear, the anger, the strange grief of losing a father who was still alive. 3 years passed. Mom healed more, though she would always carry scars, both physical and emotional. Emma graduated high school as valedictorian, headed to Columbia to study law with plans to become a prosecutor specializing in domestic violence. I graduated with honors and got a job at a tech company developing safety apps for abuse victims. Then Dad started writing letters from prison. The first ones went to Mom, who burned them unopened, then to Emma, who returned them to sender. Finally to me, probably thinking I was his best chance at reconnection. I read the first letter out of curiosity. It was 20 pages of justification, blame, and self-pity. He claimed Mom had provoked him, that the stress of providing for us had driven him to violence, that we didn't understand the pressure he had been under. He said I had ruined his life over minor marital disputes. He demanded I visit him, said I owed him that much as his son. I wrote back once, "William, I won't call you Dad. You had 22 years to stop. You had thousands of opportunities to choose differently. You had endless chances to get help. Instead, you chose violence every time. You didn't lose your family because of the videos. You lost us because of what was in them. I didn't ruin your life. I just showed everyone who you really were. Don't contact us again. We've moved on. We're healing. We're free. Your son in biology only, Jackson." He wrote back several more times, letters oscillating between rage and manipulation, but I never responded again. Eventually, the letters stopped. I heard through the legal system that he had been transferred to a maximum security facility after attacking another inmate. He was adding years to his sentence with his violence, unable to control himself even when it was destroying him. 5 years after the viral videos, our lives had found a new normal. Mom married Robert in a small ceremony with just family and close friends. She had published a memoir about surviving domestic violence that helped countless other victims. She still flinched sometimes, still had nightmares, but she also laughed again, genuinely and freely. Emma was in law school, top of her class, interning with the district attorney's office. She had prosecuted her first domestic violence case as a student attorney and won. The defendant got 15 years. She called me crying after the verdict, saying she finally understood why I had done what I did. I had started my own company, developing technology to help domestic violence victims safely document abuse and connect with resources. The app, called Silent Witness, had helped thousands of victims gather evidence like I had. Several convictions had been secured using documentation from the app. It felt like turning our trauma into something useful. Maya and I got engaged on the anniversary of Mom's freedom. Not the day of the arrest, but the day she smiled genuinely for the first time after. It had been 4 months after Dad's imprisonment, and Mom had laughed at something on TV, then looked surprised at her own joy. That was the day I knew we would really be okay. The wedding was beautiful. Mom walked me down the aisle, a reversal of tradition that felt right. Emma was my best woman. Robert officiated. He had gotten ordained online just for this. Maya's family embraced ours, understanding that families could be built from broken pieces. During the reception, Mom gave a speech that left everyone in tears. 22 years ago, I lost myself to violence and fear. I stayed because I thought I was protecting my children, not realizing I was teaching them that abuse was acceptable, that love could coexist with violence. My son, Jackson, saved me in a way I couldn't save myself. He saw what everyone else chose to ignore. He documented what others would have left hidden. He chose my safety over his father's reputation, my life over family secrets. That took a courage I didn't have. It took a love that transcends the complicated bonds of blood. He didn't just save my life. He gave me the chance to discover who I could be without fear. To Maya, you're getting a man who understands that love means protection, that family means choosing each other's well-being over comfort or convention. Cherish him. He's one of the good ones. I should know. I raised him despite everything. To everyone here, remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is expose the truth, even when it's ugly, even when it hurts, even when it destroys the fiction everyone prefers to believe. Love isn't silence in the face of abuse. Love is action, even when that action is posting a video that will destroy your father but save your mother. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Life continued. Maya and I had 2 children, daughters we named Hope and Justice. Corny maybe, but meaningful to us. We raised them in a house without violence, without fear, without the walking on eggshells that had defined my childhood. When they got upset, we talked through emotions. When we got frustrated, we took breaks. When conflicts arose, we resolved them with words, not fists. But we also taught them to recognize abuse, to speak up, to document, to act. We taught them that family secrets that protect abusers aren't worth keeping, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is show the world an ugly truth. Mom became a grandmother who spoiled her grandchildren ridiculously. She babysat while Maya and I worked, reading them stories, teaching them to bake, giving them all the peaceful childhood moments she couldn't give Emma and me. Watching her with them was healing for all of us. Proof that cycles could be broken, that violence wasn't inherited, that we could choose differently. Emma became a successful prosecutor, known for her fierce advocacy for abuse victims. She had a nearly perfect conviction rate, partly because she understood the psychology of abuse from the inside. She knew why victims stayed, why they lied, why they protected their abusers. She could speak to juries with an authenticity that came from lived experience. She also fell in love with another prosecutor who appreciated her passion and understood her drive. They had a son they named William, not after our father, but as a reclamation of the name. Names aren't evil, Emma said. People are. This William will be different. And he was. Little William grew up gentle and kind, surrounded by love and stability. He knew about his grandfather in age-appropriate ways, that he had made bad choices, and had to go away, that we didn't see him, because he hadn't learned to be safe. But he also knew he was deeply loved, that his family had fought to be free and healthy, that he was part of a story of survival and triumph. Dad served 18 years of his 25-year sentence before dying of a heart attack in prison. We were notified but didn't attend the funeral. The prison held a pauper's burial with no attendees. The man who had been so concerned with image and reputation died alone and unmourned, a cautionary tale about the cost of violence. I felt complicated emotions when he died, not grief exactly, but a strange emptiness. The man who had terrorized my childhood, who had nearly killed my mother multiple times, who had shaped so much of who I became through opposition to him, was gone. The boogeyman was dead. The monster was defeated, but it didn't feel like victory. It just felt like the end of a very long, very painful chapter. Mom cried when she heard, surprising all of us. "I'm not crying for who he was," she explained. "I'm crying for who he could have been, for the man I thought I married, for the father you deserved, for the waste of a life that could have been good." We held a memorial of sorts, not for Dad, but for the father and husband we had needed him to be. We shared memories of the rare good moments, acknowledged the complexity of loving someone who hurt you, grieved the family we should have had. It was cathartic in a way his actual death wasn't. The viral videos still circulated sometimes, resurfacing whenever domestic violence was in the news. Occasionally, someone would recognize Mom, or me, want to talk about it, share their own story. We became reluctant public faces of survival, quoted in articles, invited to speak at conferences, asked to contribute to documentaries. But mostly we lived quiet lives. Mom retired from teaching and wrote children's books about emotional intelligence and conflict resolution. I expanded my company to include resources for children witnessing abuse. Emma worked to reform laws around domestic violence prosecution. We turned our trauma into purpose without letting it define us entirely. Maya and I celebrated our 10th anniversary by renewing our vows. This time, both my daughters were flower girls, Emma officiated, and Mom sang, something she hadn't done since before the abuse started. Her voice was older but beautiful, filling the small chapel with a hymn about redemption and second chances. During the reception, my daughter Hope, then 8, asked me, "Daddy, why did Grandpa Bill hurt Grandma Jennifer?" I had prepared for this question, rehearsed answers, but in the moment, only the truth seemed right. "I don't know, sweetheart. Sometimes people make terrible choices and hurt the people they're supposed to love. But the important thing is that we stopped him, and now Grandma is safe and happy." "How did you stop him?" "By showing everyone what he was doing, by not keeping it secret anymore." "So secrets aren't always good." "No, baby. Secrets that protect people who hurt others are never good. If someone is being hurt, we tell someone. We get help. We don't keep those secrets." She nodded solemnly, then ran off to play with her cousins, the weight of generational trauma lifted for a moment by childhood joy. Later that night, after the girls were asleep, Maya and I sat on our porch, watching the stars. The night was peaceful, no tension, no fear, no sounds of violence through walls, just crickets and distant traffic and the breathing of a world at rest. "Do you ever regret it?" Maya asked, going viral with it instead of just going to the police. I thought about it. The viral part was hard, losing our privacy, becoming public figures of trauma, having our worst moments available for anyone to see. But going to the police might not have been enough. Dad had connections, influence. The public shame was what destroyed his power. Without that, he might have gotten a slap on the wrist, and Mom might be dead now. "You saved her life. The internet saved her life. I just pointed the camera. You did more than that. You chose her over him. You chose truth over comfort. You chose action over complicity. I chose the only thing I could live with. We sat in comfortable silence, two people who had found love after trauma, who had built something beautiful from broken pieces. 10 years later, Mom was diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's. The doctor said it could be related to the repeated head trauma from years of abuse. Another gift from Dad, delivered decades later. But even as her memory faded, she remembered being safe. She forgot many things, names, dates, faces. But she never forgot that she was loved, that she was free, that the danger was gone. In her confusion, she would sometimes ask where Bill was, and we would tell her he was gone, far away, never coming back. She would nod, relieved, and return to her puzzle or her book or her garden. Emma and I took turns caring for her, making sure she had the best treatment, the most comfort, the dignity Dad had tried to steal. We hired caregivers who were gentle and patient, who understood that behind the confusion was a woman who had survived hell and deserved peace. One day, in a moment of clarity, she grabbed my hand and said, "Jackson, thank you for the cameras. Thank you for showing everyone the truth. You remember? I remember enough. I remember you saved me. I remember I got to live without fear. I remember I got to see my grandchildren grow up safe. That's enough." She died 2 years later, peacefully, surrounded by family. Her funeral was standing room only. Students she had taught, women from her support group, readers of her memoir, survivors she had helped. Person after person spoke about how she had touched their lives, how her story had given them courage, how her survival had shown them that escape was possible. Emma gave the eulogy. Jennifer Morgan was my mother, my hero, my example of resilience. She survived 22 years of domestic violence and then thrived for 20 more years in freedom. She raised 2 children in hell and somehow kept us capable of love. She endured unimaginable pain and emerged with grace intact. But more than a survivor, she was a teacher, not just of English, but of life. She taught us that love shouldn't hurt, that secrets protecting abusers aren't worth keeping, that it's never too late to start over. She taught us that broken bones heal, bruised souls recover, and shattered families can be rebuilt stronger. My brother's cameras captured the worst of her life, but they also gave her the best of it. 20 years of freedom, love, grandchildren, purpose. 20 years of being Jennifer instead of a victim. 20 years of teaching the world that domestic violence thrives in shadows but dies in light. Mom, you are free now. Completely, eternally free. No more pain, no more fear, no more memory loss. Just peace. The peace you fought for, suffered for, and finally found. We'll continue your work. We'll keep sharing your story. We'll keep fighting for those still trapped. We'll keep choosing courage over comfort, truth over silence, action over complicity. You didn't just survive, Mom. You transcended. And in doing so, you showed us all how to transcend too. I stood at her grave afterward, thinking about the journey from those first Ring cameras to this moment, about how $20 of technology and 1 week of footage had changed everything, about how the most important moments of our lives can hinge on such small decisions. To buy a camera, to check the footage, to hit post. The viral videos were still out there, immortal in the digital age. Occasionally, they would resurface, be shared by new activists, be used in new contexts. Each time, I felt the same mixture of pride and discomfort. Pride that we had escaped, that our story helped others. Discomfort that our trauma was permanently public, that Mom's worst moments were always one search away. But that was the price of freedom in the digital age. Privacy exchanged for protection. Secrets replaced with safety. The personal made public to achieve justice. Subscribe to this channel if you understand that Sometimes saving someone requires exposing everything. If you're in an abusive situation, document everything safely. Plan carefully. Know that leaving is possible, that justice is possible, that healing is possible. Hit that notification bell to join our community of survivors who chose truth over silence. Today, I run a nonprofit that provides free Ring cameras and documentation apps to domestic violence victims. We've distributed over 10,000 cameras, recorded countless incidents, secured hundreds of convictions. Each camera is a potential life saved, a family freed, a cycle broken. Emma is a judge now, the youngest in our state's history. She's known for her tough sentences on domestic abusers and her compassion for victims. In her chambers hangs a photo of Mom from After the Freedom, smiling, unbruised, radiant, a reminder of why she does this work. My daughters are teenagers now, strong and confident and unafraid. They know our family history in age-appropriate detail. They understand that their grandfather was dangerous, that their grandmother was brave, that their parents chose truth over comfortable lies. They're proud of our survival, our choices, our refusal to let violence win. Hope wants to be a therapist, to help families heal from trauma. Justice wants to be an engineer, to build technology that protects people. Both of them carry forward the lesson of those Ring cameras, that sometimes the solution is simple, that technology can be liberation, that documentation is power. Maya and I are still married, still in love, still healing from our respective traumas while building something beautiful together. We have the marriage Mom never got to have. Partnership without fear, disagreement without violence, love without pain. We show our daughters daily what healthy relationship looks like, what respect sounds like, what safety feels like. Sometimes I dream about that night, March 26th, watching Dad punch Mom through the Ring camera feed. In the dreams, I rush downstairs, stop him, save her in the moment instead of through video. But then I wake up and remember that immediate intervention might have led to more violence, that the cameras gave us undeniable proof, that the viral spread ensured justice. There's no perfect way to escape domestic violence. No ideal solution that doesn't involve pain, loss, difficult choices. But there are ways out. There are tools, technological and legal and communal. There are people who will believe you, help you, protect you. The Ring cameras were just tools. The real power was in choosing to use them, in deciding that enough was enough, in prioritizing Mom's safety over Dad's reputation. The real courage was hitting post, knowing it would destroy our privacy, but save our lives. 20,000 people still watch those videos every month. Some are researchers. Some are survivors looking for courage. Some are just consuming trauma as entertainment. But if even one person sees them and thinks, I need to get cameras, or I need to leave, or I need to help, then the loss of privacy was worth it. Mom used to say, before the Alzheimer's took her words, that sunshine was the best disinfectant. That abuse thrived in darkness, but withered in light. That keeping secrets to protect family reputation was how violence perpetuated across generations. She was right. The moment those videos went viral, the moment Dad's violence was exposed to millions, the power dynamic shifted. He went from controller to controlled, from abuser to prisoner, from respected to reviled. All because of cameras he never knew existed and courage he never thought I had. That's the lesson I want to leave you with. Abusers count on silence, on shame, on family loyalty, overriding victim protection. They count on their reputation, mattering more than their victim's safety. They count on the difficulty of proving abuse that happens behind closed doors. But technology has changed the game. Cameras are tiny and cheap. Cloud storage preserves evidence abusers can't destroy. Social media can amplify victims' voices beyond the reach of local influence. The tools of documentation and exposure are available to almost everyone. Use them. If you're being abused, document safely. If you know someone being abused, help them document. If you see abuse, don't look away. Don't prioritize family reputation over family safety. Don't keep secrets that protect abusers and endanger victims. Be willing to be the one who installs the cameras, who saves the evidence, who hits post, even when your finger shakes over the button. Be willing to destroy a family to save the people in it. Be willing to choose truth over comfort every time. Because somewhere right now, a woman is telling people she fell down the stairs. A child is learning to move silently through their own home. A family is keeping violent secrets to protect someone's reputation. They need someone to see the truth, to document it, to expose it, to choose their safety over an abuser's comfort. They need someone to be what I was at 18, scared but determined, conflicted but committed, willing to use $20 of technology to destroy a 22-year reign of terror. The cameras are watching now. The cloud is storing evidence. The internet is waiting to amplify truth. All that's missing is someone brave enough to use these tools, to choose victims over victimizers, to trade secrets for safety. Be that person. Install the cameras. Document the truth. Hit post. Save someone the way I saved my mom. The way Mom saved us, by surviving long enough to be saved. The way those $20 Ring cameras saved an entire family from a man who wore a suit to work and his wife's blood on his knuckles at home. Technology won't solve domestic violence, but it can expose it. And exposure, as Dad learned in 12 viral hours, can be more powerful than 22 years of hidden fists. The cameras are watching. The evidence is mounting. The post button is waiting. Someone just needs to be brave enough to push it. I was, at 18, shaking with fear, but doing it anyway. You can be too. The viral videos proved that. Mom's freedom proved that. Our survival proved that. And if our pain being public helps even one family escape, then every view, every share, every comment was worth it. That's the mathematics of viral justice. One family's exposed trauma multiplied by millions of views equals countless others finding courage to document, to leave, to survive. The equation that started with $20 cameras and ended with 25 years in prison. The formula that turned my father from respected executive to reviled criminal in 12 hours. The arithmetic of abuse meeting the exponential power of the internet. It works. I'm living proof. Mom lived proof until Alzheimer's took her memories but couldn't touch her freedom. Emma is proof, serving justice from the bench. My daughters are proof, growing up unafraid. The thousands helped by our story are proof. Even Dad, dying alone in prison, was proof that exposure has consequences, that viral videos can be verdicts, that the internet doesn't forget or forgive systematic abuse. The Ring cameras are still in the old house. New family lives there now, unaware of what those cameras witnessed, documented, exposed. That's okay. They served their purpose. They caught a monster. They freed a family. They changed lives far beyond our own. $20 of technology. 1 week of footage. 3 million views in 12 hours. 25 years in prison. 20 years of freedom. Countless lives saved through shared story. That's the ROI on Ring cameras when they're used to document domestic violence. That's the power of choosing exposure over enabling. That's the mathematics of salvation through surveillance. The cameras saved us. The truth freed us. The viral spiral of justice protected us. And Mom got to die peacefully, surrounded by love, never hit again. That's everything. That's enough. That's the point. Thank you for listening to my story of growing up faster than I ever wanted to. I've left 2 more stories on your screen, both from young men who learned that sometimes becoming an adult doesn't happen at 18. It happens the moment your family needs you to be strong. Click on whichever one speaks to you. And if you want to join our community of people who understand what it's like to be forced to grow up overnight, that notification bell is waiting. Until tomorrow, remember, age is just a number, but courage defines who you really are.